What is going on with some top free agents like Nazem Kadri or PK Subban? Will they be signing deals here in the near future? Plus, could we see a blockbuster trade out of the Rangers organization? Would Chris Drury actually trade Artemi Panarin? I want to discuss that, plus the latest trade talk around Vladimir Tarasenko and the Matthew Tkachuk trade. We do have some updates on what was being offered by the Blues, and the young goaltender in the Canucks organization has officially requested a trade. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of free agent and trade rumors we're going to take a look at here today. First up, I want to talk about some UFAs like PK Subban and Nazem Kadri. Now, PK Subban, of course, is coming off a $9 million deal. So we know it's no big surprise that he's not getting a long-term big money deal. Of course, his play has fallen off quite a bit since he was a Norris Trophy winning defenseman, making a $9 million a number of years back. Of course, that contract was signed with the Montreal Canadiens. He's been since traded on multiple occasions. Of course, the big trade for Shea with the Nashville Predators. Then, of course, he ended up in New Jersey. Now, it was believed earlier to be right before free agency started. I heard, seen somewhere that the Devils had informed Subban that they likely wouldn't be offering him a new deal to explore what else was out there. But, maybe at the end of free agency, depending on what else they've done, if they still had a spot to fill, they might consider kind of giving him a call back, so to speak. That was kind of where they left things. And at this point, considering all the other moves we've seen the Devils do, I really don't think we're going to see a return of PK Subban to New Jersey. There has been a lot of talk, and I think it's mostly from Montreal fans and media who would kind of like to see a return to Montreal. There's been a lot of talk about that being potentially something we could see. I don't really think that's the case. I've seen some reliable Montreal media say that it's not happening, that there's probably no chance of the Habs bringing back PK Subban. I think for some people, obviously, he was a very polarizing player during his time in Montreal. I think at least some people are probably a little sad on how things ended and how he ended up leaving the team. So to make a return and kind of hopefully what they would probably feel to make things right, so to speak, would be what they'd want to see, but it doesn't seem realistic at this point. According to Dave Pagnotta of the fourthperiod.com, there doesn't appear to be a ton of interest on PK around the NHL, and he's likely going to have to take like a short-term prove-it contract to be able to continue playing. So we're probably looking at a 1 year, $1 million, like your veteran special, like you sometimes see on a player who's kind of declined in play and for whatever reason, either due to injuries or whatever, has to kind of rehabilitate their reputation of being a more reliable player. And we'll see what happens. There are teams out there that I can state are certainly looking for right shot defensemen, and for the right price, like a 1 year, $1 million, probably would take PK Subban on. I don't know that teams are going to want to do a whole lot more than that, see how he fits, see how he plays. If he can kind of bounce back and be, I don't think he's going to be the Norris Trophy winning type player again, but if he's at least better than what he's been in the last few years, maybe he could extend his career. I think it's inevitable. PK Subban will eventually end up being involved in media in some capacity, whether it be ESPN, Turner, Sportsnet, one of the networks between the U.S. and Canada. We'll definitely have him on there with his personality, I have no doubt. But if he wants to continue playing, which is uncertain at this point, it's going to have to be a short-term, very cheap contract to have any hope of getting a team to get him a deal. Now, on to Nazem Kadri. Now, the latest talk around him, and this information comes from Elliot Friedman. He and Jeff Merrick put out a surprise 32 Thoughts podcast. Of course, the one before that, a few weeks ago, was supposed to be the season finale until the fall, but of course they did have enough news that they kind of wanted to talk about that has transpired since they last did a show, so they wanted to get some stuff out there. Now, when it comes to Kadri, Friedman thinks that the New York Islanders are heavily involved and might even have a deal done for Kadri. He also speculates that the Avalanche are probably the only other team in the mix. He's heard some rumors about the Calgary Flames. Doesn't think there's anything to it. He says the Flames are likely kind of lurking, so to speak, but there was some people saying that they thought Calgary would offer like a big money deal to lure him to the Flames. Of course, they're still trying to recoup and kind of retool here after losing Gaudreau and Tkachuk. But after taking on the contracts for Huberdeau and Uyghur, they still got to sign Mangiapane. They really don't have that much, like a huge amount of money to work with. They might be able to make a subsequent move to free up some cash or something like that. I just don't think the Flames are going to really be able to offer Kadri anything lucrative. Now, could they sign him? Sure they could, but he would have to accept something that would be considered a bit of a discount for what he was hoping to get. But at this point, I'll be shocked if Kadri gets anywhere near what some people were thinking before the season ended. I mean, there was talks that he would probably get his last big contract signed for 7 years or something like 6-7 years, and maybe get $8 million a year or something like that. And it doesn't. At this point, I'll be surprised considering how long it's taken. I don't think a big, huge deal is likely, but you just never know, because the one team that likes to keep things secret is Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders. I mean, look at last year. He had a bunch of business taken care of and kind of stuffed it in his top drawer and didn't tell anybody. And we never really found out. I can't remember exactly how late it was into the summer, but it seems to me he was getting pretty close to training camp. Well, like the Kyle Palmieri signing and Casey Cizikas. There were all deals that were highly speculated, that these players were not talking to other teams. Like, it was pretty obvious to the educated person who could kind of do some digging around that they were going back to the Islanders, but there was nothing confirmed, so that we didn't know the terms. Like, it's one thing to know that they're going to go there, but to not know the terms. See, the rumor was last summer, and it's kind of what Friedman's talking about again, so to speak, is that Lou in the secrecy is trying to keep things top secret because he's probably working on other moves, and he doesn't want other teams to know exactly what he's dealing with when it comes to his salary cap situation. So therefore, he feels he's got a leg up if they don't know everything. I'm not really sure that's the case, because if I can figure him out and NHL reporters can figure him out, I'm sure NHL GMs can too. I think it really needs to knock that crap off and just announce things when they're done. That drives everybody crazy, and to be completely honest, I think it's driving Islanders fans crazy enough, and it's probably going to hurt season ticket sales as well. I know the New York Islanders did a really nice gesture, buying, I believe it was $50,000 worth of lottery tickets, because there was a huge mega million draw going on in the United States. I'm sure if you're a U.S. citizen, you probably have heard about this. I think it's over $1 billion, which I think the draw has already taken place. I think it was last night, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe it did have a winner, because I heard something on the radio earlier about that. Don't know exactly, but I do believe that's taken place. But anyway, they were buying $50,000 worth of tickets, and they were going to split it if any of them were the big winner amongst all of their season ticket holders, staff, etc., which was a great gesture. It's $50,000 worth of tickets celebrating 50 years or something like that, I believe, is what was sent out to potential season ticket holders. And there was like the short-term offer to buy and get this bonus, right, to get in on the action. And some fans are kind of looking at this as saying, I don't know if I really want to at this point. Like, what are you doing with this team? Like, people are getting frustrated. There's also speculation that they have a Noah Dobson contract all looked after, the top young RFA, who is certainly going to be a big part of the team's future. Elliot Friedman talked about that on the podcast, saying that there's many that think that they have a deal done, and it's kind of like we saw last year, that Lou's basically got it stuffed in his top drawer, and it's not being confirmed at the NHL Central Registry or being made it public. So I don't know, but at this point, there's highly speculative that Kadri could very well end up with the Islanders, and Dobson obviously will be there. We know that, but what his deal will be, I don't know. Is it a bridge deal? Is it a long-term deal? We don't know. I think it's quite likely that Lou is working on deals, because he's going to have to shed money if he wants to bring in Kadri for a reasonable price, and we don't know what he's working on with who exactly. There's lots of usual suspects. We know he'd probably like to move. There's been rumors about Varlamov. There's been rumors about Bailey. There's been rumors about Beauvillier. Who's going to go and where they're going to go, we don't know, because nobody seems to know what Lou is up to. I kind of been wondering, joking around a few times here on the channel, wondering if Lou's just taking a long summer's nap or what he's doing. But he needs to communicate with the fans. He hasn't been doing media availability, and I know fans have had it, and they are getting frustrated, and it's starting to really show with their fan base on social media. So I think he needs to kind of emerge here from the darkness and do a media availability and bring people up to speed with where things are at. And if he does have deals for Kadri or Dobson, just announce them and get them done with, so everybody can move on. Anyways, maybe Kadri's more speculative than Dobson for sure. Dobson, like I said, we know he's they hold his rights. He's staying. It's just a matter of what the contract is. But Kadri would be a good fit there, but not perfect really, because good offensive player, good grit, good work ethic. Of course, the familiarity between Kadri and Lou from their time in Toronto. but, they really need more of a winger. But if they make some adjustments to their lineup like we talked about before, I think it could work. It could be successful, but it would be something nice to give the fan base a little bit of optimism moving into the rest of the offseason here before the season gets underway. Now, on to the trade talk of the day. Young goaltender Michael Dipietro with the Vancouver Canucks has officially requested a trade away from Vancouver. The last time we had talked about Michael Dipietro was probably, it was a few weeks back in the early part of the offseason. There was speculation that the Montreal Canadiens were interested in the young goaltender, bringing him into their organization, and he likely could battle with Kadri Rumours at the American Hockey League level, maybe be part of their tandem there. But at this point, there's still some uncertainty about where Samuel Montembeault is going to play because we don't know the health and availability of Carey Price. That's a big question mark over the team. If Carey Price doesn't play, then Jake Allen and Samuel Montembeault will be the NHL tandem. Kadri Rumours will play the AHL, and they could very well use a guy like Dipietro to come in and be the tandem with Primo at the American Hockey League in Laval. But if they have to send Montembeault down, which I don't know if they will do or not, because he would be requiring waivers, they do like carry 3 goalies. I'm not sure what they do because it's not really fun to carry 3 goalies because one of them is not going to play much. But we'll have to wait and see what they do in that regard. But when we talked about it before, that's all we really talked about because that was the rumor that Montreal was interested in Dipietro and that the Canucks might be willing to move him because it was rumored they were looking to bring in a veteran for their American Hockey League team. And, of course, they already have their NHL duo set up. And Jim Rutherford confirmed this recently. I think it was probably about almost a week ago now, 4 or 5 days ago. I can't remember when it was. I heard this a while back. We just haven't talked about it yet. That he was on, I believe it was the Donnie and Daly show in Vancouver. And he confirmed that Dipietro has been given permission for him and his agent to speak to other teams to facilitate a trade, and that they had officially requested to be able to be moved to get better opportunities. So we'll have to see. I think Montreal does make a lot of sense for them. I wouldn't be shocked if that is revisited, but I think they might have to wait a little bit here to see the availability of Carey Price before they pull the trigger on that one. Elliot Friedman also talked on the podcast about the Matthew Tkachuk trade since he hadn't really done much of that publicly as of yet, at least in a podcast format. So Friedman talked about the Blues offer because there was a lot of talk, as of course came from Jeremy Rutherford, that the Blues had offered Tarasenko, Scandella, and something else in the form of futures, whether it be a first rounder or a prospect. We don't know what the other pieces were, but it was those 2 roster players and some kind of future assets attached to it. And that's what Rutherford was reporting based on his sources. And Friedman is now saying that he's not wrong with what they were trying to move, but that it wasn't all being offered to the Calgary Flames. He's been told that it was actually a case of them trying to move Tarasenko elsewhere because he doesn't think Tarasenko would waive to go to Calgary, or he also kind of doubted that it made more sense for Calgary to accept that kind of deal. But he obviously, with Tarasenko having some say over where he goes, that might be a problem. But they were trying to find a trade for Tarasenko at that point in time to be able to get in on the sweepstakes here for Tkachuk, basically just freeing up the money. So at the end of the day, that never happened. Of course, he got traded to Florida. So the offer that was being reported, and we talked about this on a video back a while back after Rutherford had reported that as well. It seems like that might be a little bit different than was originally put out there. But at the end of the day, it goes to show us that the St. Louis Blues are more than willing to move Vladimir Tarasenko. I think the only reason we haven't seen him honor his trade request is that it's difficult to do given his contract, given his status, obviously his importance to the team. At the same time, the availability to bring back an impact player that's going to give them what he does or more. That's kind of where I think Doug Armstrong is at with that when it comes to moving him. So I do think it's quite likely at this point, if the Blues have a down season and they do worse than we expect, maybe he's traded at the deadline. But if not, then I would think that they probably ride it out and he leaves next year as an unrestricted free agent. That's more than likely what's going to happen, at least based on where things stand today. Things can always change, of course, but it sounds like for those out there who think Tarasenko is 100% going to stay, I'm not entirely convinced. I just think the right deal has not come along, and if it does, they'll definitely pull the trigger. And there was also an interesting tidbit on an Arthur Staple article in The Athletic about the New York Rangers. He did a mailbag type article, and one of the questions evolved around Artemi Panarin. And he actually says that he believes that Chris Drury, the GM of the Rangers, would definitely be interested in moving Panarin. However, of course, it's not that simple. It's complicated. For one, he makes a lot of money. For one, he has trade protection in his contract. And, it's not the easiest deal to complete. But the fact that he's saying that he believes that Drury would definitely be interested is certainly telling. Arthur Staples very well connected to this team, has been covering them for some time, and would have a lot of inside knowledge about what they may or may not be thinking about doing. Now, of course, there was reports as well right after the season ended for the Rangers, after they were beaten out of the playoffs, that there was some reports that saying that there might be a rift brewing between Panarin and Chris Drury, that Drury was very unhappy with Panarin's playoff performance, and that he wasn't really thrilled with everything, considering the kind of player he's expected to be and the kind of money he's making, everything like that. I think it's fair to say that I know I was a little bit critical of Panarin's play as well. I think he had his moments where he was really good, but he also had his moments where he was non-existent. He just didn't have a great playoff. He was inconsistent, and certainly could have been better. Like I said, which I understand if this was indeed true in the case, that for what he makes, he is expected to do a lot and be a top guy all the time. You don't take nights off. Not saying he was doing that, but there were nights when it looked like he just wasn't engaged for whatever reason. There could be other things at play that we're not aware of course, that could be having an impact. So I don't want to judge too much on the player, but regardless of what was going on, the results were not consistent and results were not fantastic. A lot of times they went as far as they did in spite of him not being at his absolute best. So the fact that we heard those reports then, and now we're seeing this from Arthur Staple now, I do really wonder if there is a chance we could see a deal. Now, he also went on to clarify that because of the no-move clause, because of the money that he's making, it would be complicated, and it's pretty unlikely that we see that, and it probably wouldn't be something that Drury really pushes too much. I guess if he get an offer that came along, he might talk to him about waiving, maybe, but at the end of the day, it's a case of, if there becomes a rift like that's been rumored, and it gets to the point that Panarin would rather leave, then at that point they would do it. Otherwise, it's it's an unlikely scenario just because it's so complicated to do. It's not like he could just pick up the phone, find a deal, and pull the trigger on something, and Panarin's gone. Also, be really interesting to see how things work out as well, because he had great chemistry with Ryan Strome for a long time, and of course Ryan Strome's not with the Rangers any longer, so it will be interesting to see how he adapts to some new line mates next year and see how his role might change a little bit. But of course, Chris Drury wasn't the GM who signed this monster long-term deal. Sometimes when you get changes in executives and management like that, or even coaching staff, and they're not the guys that wanted to bring them in, sometimes there's not the greatest, or they can have more complicated relationships at times because they're not their guys. We see that happen a lot, but we'll see. I think a Panarin trade is unlikely. I just found it very interesting and telling that we've seen multiple reports about a potential rift, and now Arthur Staple feels that Chris Drury likely would be interested in moving him if he could, if the right deal came along. So let me know what your thoughts are on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.